The recent White House conference on cooperative conservation brought citizens from all walks of life together in St. Louis for one purpose: to make cooperation, local leadership, voluntary commitment, and private land stewardship the hallmark of conservation for the 21st century. An executive order of the President declares cooperative conservation to be the conservation policy of the United States. Several Utahns attended the three-day conference and came home even more committed to make cooperative conservation a way of doing business in Utah. This video highlights the Utahns who participated in the conference, and it will introduce you to an exciting group of Utah conservation partners that are showing what it really means to be partners in conservation. Let's take a look at cooperative conservation, Utah style. With support from the governor, a group of Utahns formed the Utah Partners for Conservation and Development. This group embodies the spirit of cooperative conservation, as explained by Sylvia Gillen, the group's chair.
As I attended the Cooperative Conservation Conference, one thing became very clear to me. Those of us who manage natural resource agencies must make it easier for landowners and operators to do good things for the environment. We need to make it easier for willing stewards to help the land. When we focus the resources of all agencies and interests in Utah on specific resource needs such as watershed health, then the results really do benefit the quality of life for all our residents. This has certainly been made evident through the work of the Utah Partners for Conservation and Development. This umbrella group represents 15 separate federal and state natural resource agencies and private grazing land managers. As chair of the group, I can tell you that we're about completing on-the-ground work that demonstrates improvements resulting in healthy working landscapes. The partnership has already documented its effectiveness, bringing together $8 million in federal, state, and private funds to address watershed health issues all across Utah. This impressive work has treated 125,000 acres of both private and public lands. Never before has range restoration work been carried out with this level of coordination and cooperation. The value of this range restoration work is impressive. For example, we can expect to spend 12 times as much per year fighting range fires in a cheatgrass-dominated ecosystems than we would fighting a similar fire in a restored native shrub steppe ecosystem. And perhaps more importantly, we need to recognize healthy range and forest resources can help prevent wildfires. Our hope is that by creating healthy landscapes, fewer public funds will be needed to address emergency watershed restoration activities like the huge floods in St. George, which followed fire, significant moisture events, and rapid melting in the watershed. The way we go about carrying out cooperative conservation is important. First, it's imperative that we do this on a watershed basis. Second, we must do it quickly. We're proposing we follow a rapid watershed assessment process that will quickly identify the resource issues, the organizations, and the funds available to address those issues. A good example of this is Utah's recently adopted Wildlife Action Plan for species and habitats of greatest conservation need. I'm really excited about being part of this dynamic partnership to restore Utah's landscapes. We hope you'll join us in finding ways to improve the quality of life for everyone here in Utah and help us achieve the goals of the Utah Partners for Conservation and Development.
Alan Smith has been ranching near Starvation Reservoir in Duchesne County for many years. He took a lifetime of practical conservation experience with him to the St. Louis conference.
13 people from the state of Utah attended that conference, but I probably gained so much there, interacting with a lot of the government officials, which I was privileged to meet, but people from all interest groups back there who shared the same ideas that we of the ranching community do, is that we need to get on the ground and put into some of these conservation practices into practice and on the ground. Right now, we're standing on the west side of our property here in the western part of Duchesne County, In this block of land from here back to the east here, we have about 12,000 acres of deeded land in here. A good deal of this was treated some 17 years ago under the old Soil Conservation Service. With their help and with their different programs, we were able to come in and reseed out in front of us about 5,000 acres of basically strictly sagebrush steppe lands that had no understory whatsoever. But after reseeding these lands and putting in a bunch of pastures, we were able to set up a grazing management program whereby we kept the improvements. The grass grew, we stayed off from our domestic livestock, and after that we were able to use some intensive grazing systems, more or less the rest rotation systems. We probably increased the forage grazing capacity out here 10 to 20 times. Before, from here for the next 4 miles here, we couldn't supply feed for 90 cows for 4 months of the year. Right now we're producing enough feed on these properties here with the improvements that are made to produce grazing for some 1,000 cows for 4 months of the year, plus the fact that some 3,000 to 5,000 deer utilize the same range, 800 to 1,000 elk utilize these same lands, and the greater sage grouse in Strawberry Valley utilize this as their winter and spring range. And I think one of the best benefactors of all these range improvements is the downstream fisheries. The Starvation Reservoir sits downstream from us, the Strawberry River, and other downstream fisheries. Nearest to we can tell, we've probably reduced the silt load going off these lands close to 90%. Right now, with the grasses holding the precip on the land, the water infiltrates, percolates out at a slower pace. Matter of fact, we're even seeing, since the reclamation projects took place here, springs that are coming back up that we have not seen. I feel so strongly that as our footprints on the property here, we want to improve it and leave it to future generations better than we found it. And I think that'll be my legacy, is we found these properties much more productive as I leave this world and pass it on to future generations.
Bruce Adams is a county commissioner and rancher near Monticello. During the conference, he talked to a lot of people about how they manage to fund and carry out local conservation work. Back home, Bruce is a leader among a local work group that is finding innovative ways to protect habitat for the Gunnison sage grouse, as well as staying profitable in the cattle business.
I wasn't very optimistic when we went out there that they were going to be able to help me, but after listening to some of the participants in the conference and some of the stories that were told back there by landowners who had great success with cooperative conservation, I came home with a renewed interest and thinking that maybe there was a way that cooperative conservation could help me as a landowner and a rancher. One of the things that we've been involved in out here in trying to develop a project with local partners. We have a group involved in preserving the Gunnison sage grouse, and we have monthly meetings with them to determine what needs to be done on a local basis to help preserve habitat for these sage grouse. The DWR has provided sage plants which they planted on my property in order to benefit the sage grouse. We've also worked to develop water. We have a 3,000-gallon water tank here that runs off of a solar-powered well that we fill this water tank, and then it gravity flows a mile to the east and a quarter a mile to the south to 3 different stock tanks. Also off of these stock tanks we have sage grouse watering guzzlers that benefit the sage grouse, which are a sensitive bird out in this area. We've done some Dixie Harrow projects out here. We've done some reseeding using the Wildlife Habitat Improvement Program with NRCS. The BLM has been involved. They have land to the north, and they've been involved in providing some funds for some sagebrush restoration. All of these people working together have been a great help in helping me as a landowner to do things that also benefit my cattle operation, but benefit the wildlife and the sensitive species that we have in this area.
Alan Mitchell operates a cattle ranch in Utah's western desert near Vernon. The family operation has been in business for more than 100 years. Alan is associated with the Western Desert Adaptive Resource Management Group and has long been an advocate of focusing available resources on the greatest resource need. He also serves as co-chair of the Central Regional Restoration Program, sponsored by the Utah Partners for Conservation and Development.
Most important, we got to see success stories where local people, private landowners or cities or groups, they were able to affect a change on the local's landscape because they got together and cooperated with local, state, and federal government agencies, and all got on the same page and were able to see a project to fruition. I think that was the big example from the whole conference, was if you can get organized, there's no limit to what you can accomplish. On our ranch, the Benyon Ranch, we're doing different projects to improve the habitat for both sage grouse, mule deer, as well as our grazing cattle. We're doing some pinyon juniper removal and some sagebrush removal, reseeding different areas, providing wildlife waterers. And all this has been a cooperative effort, not only between our ranch, but the Forest Service, USU Extension, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and of course this local sage grouse working group, which was really, should I say, the organization that was able to get behind what we're doing and what the Forest Service is doing right next door to our place, so we can get an integrated habitat for the sage grouse and the other species that we're interested in. It would be impossible for us to do these wildlife projects alone. The state of ranching and farming in our area is marginal at best, and yet at the same time we want to be there because of the natural resources and the beauty and the wide open spaces.
Cooperative conservation in Utah or anywhere in America is the only way to assure that our money and our will to do what's right for the land will result in a sustainable future for our children and future generations. The focus of the Utah Partners began with shrub steppe restoration. Now it includes other key resource issues that affect watershed health, such as water quality, invasive species, and cooperative work that benefits healthy rural and agricultural communities. Fortunately for Utah, we have been forming strong conservation partnerships for many years. It's a great Utah tradition. The Utah Partners for Conservation and Development invite you to join in the tradition of cooperative conservation. Contact any Utah Natural Resource Agency to learn how you can become involved. It will take all of us working together to get the job done. To learn more about cooperative conservation nationwide, visit the website for Cooperative Conservation America.